for those who are politically wise, a show about the lives of Christians in Ohio involved with politics. Introducing your host, Reverend Thomas Wise.
Greetings, my fellow patriots, saints, and sinners. The show is titled Politically Wise, and I am your host, Reverend Thomas Wise. At the end of the show, there will be a blessing. Don't miss it. But first, a word from our sponsor.
Next time you're thinking about beating the train, think again. It takes a typical freight train traveling 50 miles an hour, 1.5 miles to stop. That's nearly 18 football fields. Don't try to beat the train. Ohio's roads can be highways or dieways. The choice is yours. A message from Operation Lifesaver and this station.
The opinions and statements on this show belong to those who give them. The rest of the show belongs to Thomas Wise Words, all rights reserved. Do you pray for a politician? Do you think a politician can be a Christian? Do you think a politician should stand up for Christian principles? Do you think politicians should pray together? Do you want to see more Christians in politics? If you said yes to any of these questions, please join the Ohio Prayer Caucus Network. Find the Ohio Prayer Caucus Network on Facebook. Welcome back to Politically Wise. The show is titled Politically Wise, and I am your host, Reverend Thomas Wise. This is Reverend Thomas Wise. The show is called Politically Wise. I am interviewing Mike Sabo at his office. Mike has been a aide. Is that the right term?
Yes, legislative aide.
Legislative aide. For how many years have you been doing this?
I've been with Representative Thompson for 2.5 years, and then I was a Legislative Service Commission fellow for a year before that over in the Ohio Senate.
Okay, well, tell us a little bit about your background. Where are you from?
Sure.
Where you grew up?
Sure. I'm actually from northeastern Ohio. Grew up in Strongsville, Ohio, about 20 minutes south of Cleveland. Went to Strongsville High School, graduated from there 2005. Ended up going to Ashland University and got degrees in political science and history. Graduated from there in 2009 and was a part of the Ashbrook Center for Public Affairs. It's a great political science program there, easily one of the best in the country. And then after that, got into the LSC Fellowship Program, started over in the Senate in 2009 and was there all 2010, worked with Senator Jim Hughes for the most part, but I also worked for Senators Mark Wagner and Gary Cates. And then Representative Thompson called me up. He was looking for a legislative aide and had a really good interview over the phone and kind of hit it off, and then started working for him January 2011 and been with him ever since.
And so you'll be moving on?
Yes. Yeah, I actually was lucky enough to get a really good package from Hillsdale College, be going into their graduate program, looking for to get my master's degree in politics, and hopefully that should be probably about 2 years. And then we will see what happens after that, what opportunities are out there.
So tell me about your faith. Tell me about your walk with the Lord. Tell me I'll leave that any way you want to answer that question.
Sure. Well, it's one of those things that I grew up in the Catholic Church, and just, went to PSR, all that kind of stuff, confirmation and everything. But it was one of those things where, did I really like church? Probably not at the end of the day. It was just one of those things you had to kind of bear almost. But, my dad actually, my mom both, they started going to some different churches, more kind of non-denominational, but they were affiliated through the Southern Baptist Convention. And just the teaching there just seemed to be definitely different. It seemed to present Jesus as a person you could actually have a relationship with. And that there was something that in our humanity, because we're fallen, we need him. And it was just such a stark kind of contrast. The presentation is so different, and I kind of realized how much, that there is a hole, and it's missing in all of us, and that we really, truly do need that. And it was one of those things, it wasn't something where, I accepted him into my life and then everything was fine. Not at all. Not at all. Especially being, a Christian or anything like that, it's going to get harder. The road's going to get harder because the ways of the world get more crystallized and you can see them more in your life. So it So, and I just kind of went through that, and I've definitely, tried to become more of a follower, reading the Bible, daily prayers, things like that. There's actually a couple of groups here in the Ohio House of Representatives, legislative aides that do that. We try to get together, which is great because it's part of being a believer is having some fellow believers too that you can kind of bounce off ideas off of what you see, how do you act in this situation. So that is, and at the end of the day, the church is not about a building, it's about relationships with people. So it's very, very important, and especially in politics and my job, I've just come to realize how important that aspect of Christianity is, not only just reading the Bible, praying, but then having relationships with other believers as well.
And we will be right back after the break.
To some people, they're just a pet, a dog or a cat. But to you, they're part of your family. They've shared your lives, provided companionship, and given unconditional love. And just like when a human family member passes on, you want your four-legged family members to be treated with dignity. Baker Hazel and Snyder Funeral Home and Crematory has been caring for families since 1941 and now offers the same level of service for your pets at Snyder Pet Crematory. Call 274-1151, 274-1151.
Do you pray for a politician? Do you think a politician can be a Christian? Do you think a politician should stand up for Christian principles? Do you think politicians should pray together? Do you want to see more Christians in politics? If you said yes to any of these questions, please join the Ohio Prayer Caucus Network. Find the Ohio Prayer Caucus Network on Facebook. Welcome back to Politically Wise. The show is titled Politically Wise, and I am your host, Reverend Thomas Wise. Forrest, tell us about these groups that you've been praying with.
Sure, yeah, they've actually just been a couple fellow legislative aides. Actually, in the offices right next to me, we usually get together, try to get together every week. And then one of my other friends is a legislative aide with Representative Ron Hood. Actually, we've kind of started just a prayer group up there too on the 12th floor in the Rife Center. So actually, two different groups now. It seems to be expanding a little bit, which is great. But yeah, there are definitely a lot of good people in the House, and definitely some believers in the House, and definitely along with their bosses too. There's a good group of legislators too as well. Definitely bipartisan too. People on both sides of the aisle, and that's really important that you have a good solid foundation, because without that, how effective of a legislature are you going to be at the end of the day? And if you don't have any principles or any type of foundation at all.
So in your time up here, you've been through some turbulent times.
Yes.
Here.
Yes.
How has your faith been played a role, and how has your faith walk with the Lord else out? I think there's like the whole thing with was it SB 5?
SB 5, yes, and that's actually that's what I was going to start talking about. But it was Senate Bill 5, which is the whole, obviously with the unions and everything like that, and that actually started right when I started here, was when they rolled that out. So that was obviously, there were crowds of thousands out there just screaming, hating all the people that I work with, and I think kind of my outlook has kind of definitely helped dealing with people on the phone, because it's so easy to just get mad at these people, but you have to talk to them, and you have to at least try to present a case. And I think just that you have to be humble, you have to present yourself as you're truly listening to what they're saying. You may not agree at all, but you have to respect them, and I think that's very, very important in the job. Very important.
Have you run into any difficulties where you had conflicts with your faith here at the State House?
Yes, yeah, I've not, per se, even in my job, but maybe in dealing with some people, seeing some situations, just, maybe after work or some stuff like that, some things where it's like you kind of see some things going on and you just don't want to be a part of it. So you have to, at times physically take yourself out of those situations. Obviously Jesus, walked with the tax collectors, so you're going to be walking with sinners. I mean, myself, everyone, we're still all sinners anyway, regardless of that. But, you got to just be mindful of that and know kind of maybe when, this is not a great situation to be in, and try to take yourself out of that.
What has it been like to work I know you work with Andy Thompson. I know he's a man of great faith.
Yes.
How has that been like to work for him?
It's been great. I mean, he is I can definitely say the best boss I've ever worked for, and his faith definitely shows through too, and just how he treats people. I mean, no matter what side of the aisle you're on. I mean, it seems like we have a tendency today to almost view either being a Republican or a Democrat as part of your human nature, almost your soul, and that's just not true at all. And he just deals with people in just a very good way, just across the aisle, and definitely. I mean, he's friends with people, and that's one of the most important things about politics that I think is forgotten today is the aspect of friendship. That's very, very important. So I see him do that, on a daily basis when he's in. He talks to the legislative aides. He'll talk to interns just sitting out, in the front desk. And he's just, in that way, I definitely see, aspect of his faith just lived out every time I see him here.
So you're going to move. You're going to go on. What aspirations do you think you went past that?
You know what? I'm really right now. I'm looking at the education. I'm really excited about that. But in terms of moving on, could be more than likely. I would guess would probably be Washington D.C. would probably be my next stop, either in like a think tank, like the Heritage Foundation, one of those kind of think tanks, or maybe even teaching too. Some of my friends around here definitely think maybe that's a good route too. So we'll see what happens because I love talking to people about. The American founding, the Constitution, the Declaration, the principles of the country, and how we can kind of get back to those principles. And that's, very important because American citizens, while, they may be born here in America, Americans are made. They're not born. So that's a topic that my previous teacher at Ashland, the executive director of the Ashbrook Center, Peter Schrammel, has told me, and I had really started to realize what that actually means now.
And we will be right back after the break.
Have you ever driven over a pop can? Well, when a train collides with a car, it has the same force as a car running over a pop can. Obey the warnings at railroad crossings. Don't try to beat the train. Ohio's roads can be highways or dieways. The choice is yours. A message from Operation Lifesaver.
Do you pray for a politician? Do you think a politician can be a Christian? Do you think a politician should stand up for Christian principles? Do you think politicians should pray together? Do you want to see more Christians in politics? If you said yes to any of these questions, please join the Ohio Prayer Caucus Network. Find the Ohio Prayer Caucus Network on Facebook. Welcome back to Politically Wise. Contact me at politically.wise@gmail.com. Have you seen a lot of hypocrisy here? I don't know how to ask that question. How, in terms of what each party stands for, the parties coming out, or the, not the people. I find that the legislators are, what you see is what you get, pretty much.
Yes.
They're passionate about it.
Yes.
They all have a common love for Ohio, the people of Ohio. Oftentimes that brings them into disagreement, but I'm amazed that they walk away as friends. Or at least cordial to each other. And
yes.
when the cameras are off, it's a different tone. It seems to be.
It seems to be. I mean, I've heard, though, that from both sides that, it's not as good as what it used to be, say, 15, 20 years ago. It sounds like, some of them are friends, but some of them are not at the end of the day. So I think that, for whatever reason, that's an interesting topic, too, just why things have maybe gone downhill a little bit. And I think, actually, maybe one of the reasons why is, at least on the federal level and just the political parties in general, they seem to be talking past each other. And they don't know quite how to understand each other because they're almost talking two different languages now, and it's tough. And that kind of divide seems to be widening. They'll always blame, gridlock or whatever in Washington or even here, but, the government was designed that way, so only the best laws would get through, so that everything, all the bad stuff would get stopped. So I don't think that's the reason, but I think, relationships and the lack of them is a big part in it.
Do you think statesmanship has gone down?
Oh, there's no doubt. Just even the possibility, the idea of statesmanship. I mean, that word has eliminated itself. Now you hear about being leaders and, leading men and all this kind of stuff, and that's fine, but at the end of the day, I mean, what about statesmen like, Washington, Lincoln, etc.? I mean, those guys, they had the political principles, but they had to work within the given circumstances to achieve those principles. Lincoln was slavery. I mean, it was one of those things where he had to work within a constitution that sanctioned slavery in the states in which it already had a hold. So he couldn't do that. He couldn't break the rule of law. So he did that. And he did say something like the Emancipation Proclamation is a war measure. But then he had to get amendments passed after that because he knew that was only temporary. So, and that's statesmanship. And I think, and there's a lot of reason for why we're eliminating that idea, the idea of heroes, villains, that kind of thing today. And that has to do with a lot, really, the education, the downfall in this country, I think. And that's definitely a huge problem, though. There's no doubt about it.
Let me ask this question as a student of politics. Of all the politicians that you've come across, that you've studied in the past, let's just take not the ones alive, maybe even the ones alive today. Who would you like to sit down with and ask the most questions of?
Abraham Lincoln. There's no doubt about it. Just how he thought. I mean, if you read his speeches, his letters, I mean, he was one of the greatest Americans, if not the greatest American. And just to see how he thought about situations. And then, too, his faith, because I've always heard kind of differing things about what he believed. Was he a Christian? Was he not a Christian? So that would be, very interesting, too, as well. But, yeah, Lincoln, no doubt, though.
Lincoln, no doubt. Who else would you like to do?
Washington, definitely, for some of the same reasons. I mean, Washington, obviously the general, he was offered basically to be military dictator of America. And it was the Newburgh Conspiracy in 1793, and he said no, he declined. And that's, I mean, to have that kind of virtue is almost unprecedented in human history.
The Newburgh?
Yeah, the Newburgh Conspiracy.
What is that?
It was actually a couple of his generals and his men kind of came together, and they were ready to give the country over to Washington. And he came in and knew this was happening, and he was, shocked by it, but he knew human nature. And he gave a speech where he basically put everything to rest, shamed his generals. There's a famous part where he, in the beginning of the speech, he said, basically, I've grown weary in my old age. I can't see quite as well anymore. So he put on glasses to show his humanity, that he's not perfect. Because only, he saw that only God was the true person who could actually rule us without our consent. Because we're human, we have to rule each other with consent. And he's not God. And that was his way of showing that he's just as human as anyone else, no matter his virtue or anything like that. His human nature is still the same. So, I mean, Washington would definitely be right up there, too.
If you would give advice for someone to follow in your footsteps here, what advice would you give them?
By far, definitely build relationships with people. Just with the legislative aides, I mean, that's very important because that's who you're going to be dealing with for the most part. And even across the aisle, too. I mean, I've definitely got some friends on the other side of the aisle. We may not talk about the same stuff, even politics, but, we'll just be on a human level about, hey, what'd you do over the weekend? Things like that, family stuff and things like that. And it's just very important. And then, too, just to get to know some of the legislators, just even around the floor, around the building. And then just, all the workings, all the lobbyists. I mean, there's so many people that are involved in politics. I mean, the more people you know, the better.
Is there anything else that you thought of ahead of time that you wanted to share that I haven't asked you yet?
I'm thinking about that. I think we've actually, because one of the things I wanted to talk about was statesmanship, and we covered that topic. It's a great topic. As far as I can say, I mean, I can't think of anything else, actually.
Well, this has been an interview. Thank you today with Mike Sabo in the State House. Mike is going to move on to bigger and better things, but he has been a wonderful friend to this ministry and to me, and I greatly appreciate his time. And anytime I had a question about what's going on, I would always ask Mike, and Mike would know. So I greatly appreciate him. He's been quite an asset, and he will be missed. But I hope you go on to bigger and better things, and I expect bigger and better things out of you than this. And so thank you again. Again, the show is called Politically Wise, and I'm Reverend Thomas Wise. Thank you again. The show is titled Politically Wise, and I am your host, Reverend Thomas Wise. Do you pray for a politician? Do you think a politician can be a Christian? Do you think a politician should stand up for Christian principles? Do you think politicians should pray together? Do you want to see more Christians in politics? If you said yes to any of these questions, please join the Ohio Prayer Caucus Network. Find the Ohio Prayer Caucus Network on Facebook. Welcome back to Politically Wise. The show is titled Politically Wise, and I am your host, Reverend Thomas Wise. Thank you for listening today. If you want to email me, you may do so at politically.wise@gmail.com. Please like us on our Facebook page, Politically Wise. Now, here's your blessing. Blessings based on Psalms chapter 1, verses 1 through 3. May God bless you when you walk away from the wicked. May you be blessed when you do not stand in the path of sinners. May you be blessed when you sit not among mockers. May you be blessed when you delight and meditate on God's word. May you be blessed when you yield your fruit in season.